GM, everybody. Happy Thursday. Adam, how we feeling today?
I'm not sure if I'm bullish or bearish. We're in this mode right now. I guess all the movement of everybody's like, oh, of course, Kamala's going to be the greatest president of all time. I'm like, what just happened in like a week? We went from change of administration to now we get 4 more years of what we've had in the, over the past 4 years. I just, it feels a little conflicted. Hopefully the U.S. can get their act together.
Well, on the presidential front, it looks like Donald Trump family finally launched that meme coin. If it's true or not, who knows, right? I guess we'll find out maybe after the space.
We'll find out after the rug.
Yeah, if it's $1 billion or not. We've been having these discussions over the last few weeks of all of these programmability layers that are beginning to pop up on Bitcoin. We went through it the early half of the year. A bunch of Bitcoin L2s, including Bob, which we're going to get into discussion. And then as of recently, we're seeing some of these, these node operator networks like Arc Network that we had on here, and starting to see some other variations of a quote unquote L2 execution environment, right? TSS. It's all these like 2 and 3 letter kind of word lingo, which is basically all trying to get at the heart of the same idea, which is adding specific, functionality, applying programmability, and improving the scalability. Because as we know on Bitcoin layer 1, it's unlikely that that situation will ever improve, at least not for the next, at least few halvings. Until it gets a complete culture overhaul, which we don't know if it ever will. One of the first Bitcoin L2s to the space with a very credible team is the Bob team, which we're very lucky to have here on stage, and that we'll be having a conversation with. Yeah, Pensive Shepe on the live stream says you mean counterparty, right? If we're going back to the very beginning, right, you have Mastercoin is actually, I think, the first one there, or Colored Coins, right? So a lot of history. There's maybe like a 8-year window or 7-year window where there's literally nothing that popped up since then. But now we have an explosion. We're very excited. For those that are new to the show, Adam and myself are talking through my account because we also do simultaneously stream this live that you can watch on YouTube. So if you prefer the visual experience, you could go ahead and find the Emblem Vault account. I also pinned it to the top. Please retweet the space, the Twitter spaces, so that a lot of people can come join and hear our lovely speakers. If you have any questions, you can simply just come join us on stage. We welcome all of the guests who are interested in the conversation. You can also just pop a comment in the bottom right-hand corner, that purple button, or on the live stream. You can engage with us in live time with questions, and we'll be sure to ask our lovely guests. We have on Zixi and Derek from the Bob team who are here to join us and dive into the conversation. I'm most familiar with Zixi, so I'd love to just hand it off to you first, and love to just know how you're doing today, and how are you feeling about the Bitcoin LT space?
Let's fucking go. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Adam. It's so good to hear your voice again, but on your space. So I have been a big fan of Emblem Vault. Very big reason behind this is because how our teams kind of definitely aligned in the vision of building a multi-chain future for Bitcoin. And my name is Zixi Zhang. I work for the BD team at Bob for the past few years. Our team has been around for quite a while. Before Bob, I think a lot of our friends know us as Interlay, which is a project that lived in the Polkadot ecosystem. We built the first ever fully trustless Bitcoin bridge to basically wrap Bitcoin in a very decentralized way and introduce it to other ecosystem. But after a few years of developing and scaling that bridge, we realized in order to essentially change the way that people interact with Bitcoin and convert Bitcoin hodlers into actual Bitcoin users and give more functionality and utilities to Bitcoin and make it more fun, a bridge is not enough. That's why we started the project called Bob, and it stands for Built on Bitcoin. It is a Ethereum L2, so the whole chain is built on Optimism Stack, which give users and developers very similar experience to other EVM L2 that they're already familiar with, like Base or OPBNB. But at the same time, we will introduce things like merge mining. We're also doing a lot of research into BitVM. In this way, we seek to introduce Bitcoin security to our network so that not only as a user, you get EVM user experiences, but you at the same time can inherit the security and the input from Bitcoin miners to secure your asset and the chain itself. And I will hand the mic to my lovely colleague, Derek.
Before we go to Derek, one quick question, because I think it's interesting. We haven't had many, I don't know if we've ever really had a Polkadot builder on stage, have we, Jake? What did you feel like you just weren't getting traction there? I mean, we don't hear much about Polkadot today.
Oh my God.
Tell us
that is so funny that you asked, because there's a lot of a lot of feelings whenever I think about Polkadot, because I kind of got introduced to the space and got hooked to the space. A big part of it because of the Polkadot ecosystem, because how I really enjoy the philosophy and the idea behind Polkadot. Everything is about governance. Everything is about being decentralized, and so we were building heavily there. But I guess there were quite a few issues that was limiting the ecosystem. One being that I think there was just one being that the governance process and the entire process of building was really slow. It doesn't really match up with, the wider crypto space where everything moves really fast and we need to see new things happen. We need to catch up with the rest of the narrative. So the narratives that's happening in Polkadot is a little bit disconnected from the rest of crypto, which is not friendly if you want to build something, that's in line with the market. And the other thing is also, I guess, because it has its own, there's multiple different parachains within the ecosystem. There's like a slot auction where different ways that you can secure your status as like a parachain rather than parathread. There is interoperability tasks that people have to overcome within the ecosystem before you can be interoperable outside the Polkadot ecosystem. So I guess for users to understand what it is, and for users from other ecosystems to convert and to start using it, there's a huge barrier of entry when it comes to the learning curve, which hinders the pace of development. And that's also the part of the reason why we go right into Ethereum, because we are very well aware of how, as builders, we need to adapt to the market, to how consumer already interact with their assets, rather than putting all the work into educating everyone and trying to get the market to change according to your product. So that's, I tried to keep this short, but I can go on forever.
Adam, we have a lot of familiar with that, right? Trying to educate the market to understand your product. Actually, when I first joined Emblem, I spent weeks doing research on the interoperability space across the industry. And the Bob team, I forget what the original the team was before you guys launched Bob, but
Interlay.
Yeah. The Interlay was one of the first ever Bitcoin bridges that I came across, actually. I think it was around 2019, which is just the idea of taking Bitcoin to a smart contract platform. So they've basically been in the same space that Emblem's been in for around the same amount of years, 5, 6 years. So really ahead of the game, some big pioneers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to pass it over then to Derek and get your thoughts on Bob, and also just a little bit of an explanation of yourself, your history, and your involvement with the Bob team.
Sure. Mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Derek. I do developer relations at Bob. I've been a part of the team for most of this year. I'm relatively new to the team. I joined before the mainnet launch, so I didn't get to see all the glory of the Polkadot days, but I know the lore. Yeah, basically, my background is I used to work at ETH Denver, oldest, largest crypto hackathon, and before that, I was a high school physics teacher. Like, my bread and butter is getting people excited and inspired about what can be done, and to help break super technical things down into easy to understand concepts that make sense for wherever they're at, so that they can think to themselves like, oh, I can custody my own wallet. Oh, I can deploy an app. Oh, I could be a front end developer. So I just live in that liminal space of people that are always like, the trope. If you've been around hackathons long enough, the trope is like, oh, I've got a really good idea. I'm an experienced project manager. I'm just looking for a dev. And it's like, bro, you either need to learn how to code or get a lot better at explaining what your idea is and do a lot more R&D, because I'm just like, I know what y'all have been up to at Emblem Vault for the last 8 years, and you're actually doing a deeply technical thing. And that's the kind of stuff that a lot of people are just walking into your average 1 week hackathon and being like, I just want to do a cross chain NFT ordinals thing so that people can sell them on OpenSea. And I'm like, brother, for, beyond tech issues, you got go to market issues and liquidity issues. So I just think we need a lot more it's two sides of the same coin, right? We need to inspire people because it is getting easier and easier to build all the time. And we need to set expectations. Maybe the main problem with your idea isn't execution risk. Maybe it's market risk. Nobody gives a shit. So that's why I like opportunities for us to come together and say, where are we? What are we trying to do next? And what would actually be useful?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just having this conversation with one of our team members yesterday of from the Emblem perspective. We're like, what's the better product market fit right now? Is it the technology itself, or is it that it's been used for 4 years and it has, market adoption and it has 100 million in assets? There's if we started all over, would you build Emblem without, this traction already? And could be completely different story, which sounds like you guys are doing this as well, right? Of basically jumpstarting the ecosystem. It's extremely difficult in this space to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to our BD team, right? On the YouTube, you're screen sharing our ecosystem map. And just to know, within a few months of launch, we've already got countless, literally over 100 partners. And that's the whole point, right? We're a pragmatic team. Why choose to scale Bitcoin through an Ethereum rollup? It's a deeply controversial choice that immediately exposes our Achilles heel. And the answer is, that's a pragmatic strategy in 2024. The liquidity's there, the tooling's there, and everything that you would say, oh, but it's not secure enough, or oh, it's not natively connected to Bitcoin in a read sense and a write sense. It's yeah, and we're working on making each of those specific technological objections a non-issue in the next few quarters. And that's why I'm excited to be a part of the team. We're not waiting around for some holy grail BitVM v2 ZK fraud proof rollup Bitcoin. And I see, not to name names, but some people, I think we want a plurality of strategies, right? But ours is definitely, what can we do today and how can we figure it out along the way? And we've got a track record that shows we know how to do that.
I cannot agree more. I want to echo Derek on this, with the kind of approach that we have in terms of the technology that is readily available versus, the technology that we speculate to come, which I think Emblem, this is also something that I appreciate from Emblem, because I know you guys have been interacting with all kinds of NFT standards and protocols that has been available. So it was very exciting for me to learn about the counterparty collections that is supported by Emblem, because you can kind of when I go to Emblem's website, I can kind of see a variety of things. It's a little history book of what kind of experiments that people has been doing with not just inscribing, but making non-fungible assets. possible on Bitcoin, and you have all of those supported. Even though now ordinal is like the hottest narrative, but I wouldn't be surprised if more different kind of standards is going to come and serve different purposes and take over the narrative. And I can imagine you guys would probably also supporting those upcoming technologies as well. And that's also something that we want to do, which is being a sidechain where it's very flexible to what people and what market want. Is not just about inventing new stuff, but also by finding out what is the best way to represent these Bitcoin native UTXO assets in an EVM environment, because for every different standard, there should be a different kind of, or there might need customization, and might be very different user base even within Bitcoin. Like people who is supporter of Stamp, for example, would be a different crowd from people who would support ordinals. And we can even see it from, if you go to a party where it's a counterparty party, or if in real life, or it's an ordinal party, like people look different, people dress differently. So we need, like Derek was mentioning before, we need a variety of solutions to serve different purposes and different assets.
It's interesting. And I think like you guys are both kind of touching on a similar issue, which is like, how do you get some sort of traction or something on your on the side chain that actually gets users excited or user traction. I think we had the Rootstock guys on a couple weeks ago, chatted with them, and this is like nobody uses Rootstock, right? And I think I asked them straight up, like, what's the number one DApp or whatever, what's the number one thing you would point people to on Rootstock? And it was like, well, we have a really good stable coin, and it's like, that doesn't really move the needle for users most likely. But I mean, is it just a kind of, are you looking at it as just like a shotgun effect? We're just trying to attract as many developers as possible, and hopefully, a couple of them hit. I mean, what's the base strategy for you guys?
Well, do you want to go first, Zixi?
I was going to say, I think it's better for you to comment on the developer side of things, and then maybe I can comment on the project side of things.
Sure. Yeah, I actually was just going to take it from the business side. Like, we are not scattershot because, again, like, let's put our pragmatic business hats on. Like, why would anyone care about Bob, yet another chain trying to scale Bitcoin and yet another OP stack Ethereum rollup? How is it differentiated in its infrastructure, in its branding, and in its focus? And it's clear. We want people to build on Bitcoin. So what does that mean? Don't launch yet another meme coin. Don't launch yet another Aave fork. We have those. Everyone has those. We're here to make possible things that weren't possible before. So I think the obvious nail on the head narrative going into the second half of this year is Bitcoin LSTs and Bitcoin LRTs. Everyone in the Bitcoin community has seen all the fun Ethereum has been having with Lido and Rapstake ETH and Rocket Pool and so on, and is like, I want yield. I want my Bitcoin, which is like clearly the better asset compared to ETH, to be used in this weird eigenlayer AVS restaking game everyone else is playing. Why can't I get 3% as a risk-free rate and then do derivatives on top of that and do some Pendle yield farming or whatever? So it's like, okay, great. Literally everyone's eyes are on that. You can count on us trying to be like a first mover in terms of not only making those kinds of tokens available, but making all the DeFi on top of it available. Like, okay, I hold my Bitcoin. I want to be able to bridge it trustlessly to Bob. I want to be able to hold a version of Bitcoin that I'm comfortable with. I want to be able to hold it in a yield-bearing form. I want to be able to take a loan against it so that if I ever need cash for my real life, I don't have to sell my Bitcoin. These are all really basic things, and none of these pieces have been put together into one good trustless UX yet. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're going for.
Yeah, I think there's another L2, I think it's called Babylon, that is also approaching this. When you look at some of the things that are going right for Ethereum, DeFi is definitely, the dominator of that. And within the DeFi world, you have liquid staking tokens and restaking tokens, and I believe eigenlayers, the the leading component of that, and to be able to make yield on your Bitcoin, right? Just be able to essentially stake your Bitcoin and generate 2% on it, like what you're doing with staked ETH right now. That's highly attractive, right? Because the liquidity pool of Bitcoin being at 1.2 trillion versus Ethereum's liquidity pool being at 400 billion, right, is lucrative, much more lucrative. And it goes back to this original thesis or quote from when I got in the space back in 2016, and still prevalent this day, which is, unlocking that that Bitcoin liquidity, that's held by, Bitcoin OGs who want to quote unquote put their Bitcoin to work. That kind of tooling needs to be built. But on the other side of it, maybe this is a question for you guys. Bitcoin OGs or just Bitcoin, the Bitcoin natives have a higher degree and preference for decentralization, right? They want non-custodial wallets. They want, non-custodianship staking. They want, to be able to peg in and out with trustless bridging and everything around that nature. Whereas the trade-offs on some of the other chains, right, like Ethereum or Solana, the users are more about permissionless than they are about decentralization. How does the Bob team approach, this dynamic where you're using Ethereum or EVM, right, where there can be, I guess you call it centralized or permission kind of areas, versus Bitcoin, where the majority of those who are on it want this higher degree of trust minimized or trustless applications?
I will chip in a little bit here, and of course, like Derek, please contribute more. So one of the biggest, I guess, debate about controversy about EVM L2 is the centralized sequencer, and merge mining is kind of our way to our proposal to combat this controversy, because once you integrate merge mining, when miners are able to produce block not only on Bitcoin but also on Bob, then we invite miners to be a part of our consensus mechanism to combat this possibility of the centralized sequencer shut down or have experiencing any issues. This is one end. And on the other end is there when we decide to when you go for, like, for example, EVM experiences, most of the time you're going, at least what we're approaching for is the UX is like things can be done very easily. People can do things like social logins or automated payment, more advanced DeFi stuff. And a lot of nowadays with the regulatory environment around the world, not just in the US or in Asia, but everywhere, it's almost inevitable that a lot of the dApps, a lot of the chains will have to go through, will have to KYC, will have to geo-block people. And this is kind of there are, of course, there's always going to be dApps and platform that is completely permissionless, or at least go for that ethos. But there are also a lot of these like dApps and platform, most of them, that will have to comply with these regulations. And like after interacting with more and more people, I think a lot of retail users doesn't care. That's why that's why we see a lot of the Bitcoin still be held in centralized exchanges. Like a big chunk, Bitcoin is supposed to be permissionless. Bitcoiners want a permissionless, want privacy. But we see most of the Bitcoin hodlers, which maybe make up for a smaller amount in proportion in terms of TVL for Bitcoin. A lot of people hold their Bitcoin in centralized exchanges because that's not the priority issue. People are UX maxi most people are UX maxis rather than Bitcoin maxis. And that's why we're building an L2, because we are Bitcoiners, but we want to be able to serve those demographic of people that just need easy to use applications and send money to each other.
Sure. But if I may chime in here to take the question at face value from the other side, because it was about like decentralization rather than permissionlessness. I'll start by recalling a meme that I saw years ago that was it was a picture of a small Pepe holding a fork into a socket, an electrical socket. And it was like hardware users interacting with unaudited smart contracts. Like if you have a hardware wallet and you've gone far enough to protect your private keys, but you're just like deploying into whatever brand new yield farm and you don't understand the difference between like security risk and smart contract risk. And it's like, well, you know, if you are the kind of person who says to yourself, I want to play with the Bitcoin restaking stuff that's coming up soon, that is by definition a brand new technology that has initially gone to market that isn't battle tested in the way something like Aave and Uniswap are, or Emblem Vault, right? You've been around for years, right? So, like to say, like I'm you know, I don't want to invalidate anyone's argument. People have different preferences, people have different risk profiles, and that's totally fine. If you bury your private keys in your backyard and wait 2 generations, like more power to you. But if you want to take a loan against your Bitcoin or even sell it on chain in a trustless way to a stable coin, like you immediately have to introduce trust assumptions, and you should introduce as few as possible. A really good example is Threshold. Threshold has TBTC and THUSD that are honest attempts to create wrap versions of Bitcoin and a stable coin that's collateralized. It's like the MakerDAO model. So that people can have access to these things without needing to depend on a BitGo for wrap Bitcoin or a Circle or a Tether, right? So that's like how you push at like the ecosystem level. Like what are the primitives? We need stable coins. We need wrap versions of Bitcoin and so on. But at the network level, like I just want to emphasize this pragmatic approach, right? Where are we today? Third-party bridges, for example. You can bridge from Bitcoin to wherever you want pretty easily. What do you give up? Well, I don't want my money to get stolen mid-flight, and I also don't want to take a giant haircut on the fees. Okay, so what if I could tell you that Bob already has live a native peer-to-peer bridge between Bitcoin, the network, and Bob? And instead of it being a third party who like takes your money and then promises they'll give you some on the other side, we use what's called a light relay. I'm not going to get super deep into the implementation details, but I think this is a good example of the kinds of things we want to make possible between Bob and Bitcoin. We're not just like yet another side chain. Please come over here and do stuff. We want this to be a real-time relationship between the two networks so that somebody could take their Bitcoin, have this intent, right? That's the language these days. What is the intent of what I want to do with my Bitcoin? Go get some yield. Okay, I want to, under the hood, what's happening is you say, okay, I want to move 1 Bitcoin to Bob. What actually happens is there's a market maker on the other side, and you do a trustless peer-to-peer swap. I'll skip all the details, but suffice to say, you send your Bitcoin to their Bitcoin address, and that makes it possible for you to, on the Bob side, permissionlessly claim the collateral they already put up, even without their approval. They basically put up a bid that says, if anybody sends me Bitcoin, you can come claim my wrap Bitcoin or TBTC on the other side. That's trustless. That's peer-to-peer. And in the V2 that we're launching either this week or next, we're going to have a more dynamic fee model to bring it down to like a few basis points rather than like, you know, some giant haircut. So is that perfect? No. Is it pretty darn good? Yes. Would it be even better to have a trustless two-way peg like we've all been dreaming of for years? Yeah. What do we have to wait for that? Probably some BitVM research. Is our co-founder Alexei actively working on that exact research with Robin and Super Testnet? Yes. So this is what I mean by like, we're not just pragmatic in the sense like, we'll take whatever's good enough and stop there. We're literally going to do what we can today and drive forward what we need for that next step, while other teams are saying, we'll wait around for that to be possible.
Yeah, I don't think you could have said it any better. When you saw some of the early Bitcoin L2s come to the space and use EVM, you know, there was a lot of pushback because they're like, why would you use EVM? But realistically, if you're a builder, you know that EVM is what works right now, and you can start onboarding your community and building, you know, that marketing strategy and product market fit for finding wherever the interest is for these DeFi or NFTFi kind of applications. For Bitcoin, there's been a handful of you know, Bitcoin L2s, quote unquote, that have really found that early. And now on the other side of this, I'm glad you kind of brought up BitVM because that was one of my questions, or it was one of the points I wanted to lead into. I've seen some L2s that, are going through their own kind of upgrade. Like the Stacks went through the Nakamoto upgrade, or they're going through it, right, to increase TPS, and so you can have higher transactions. There's a handful of Bitcoin L2s or sidechains I've seen that said they're waiting on OPCat, they believe, right? But that takes an actual consensus soft fork to get it pushed. And then I've seen the Bob team really leaning into BitVM, which is something that doesn't need an upgrade from what I've seen, but also has some contentiousness surrounding its plausibility. Could you just dive into why Bob is big on BitVM, and even to the degree that the founder is working directly with the BitVM team to build, this trustless bridging and these trustless aspects that could peg into Bob?
Yeah, I can start with a short one, and then Zixi, you want to add what I leave out. Basically, yeah, like I honestly love the Taproot Wizards, and I think that their strategy for endearing the hearts of everyone to OPCat through Quantum Cats and so on is just like the best. I don't even want to call it a go to market, right? It's like go to inception, go to like cultural revolution. Let's get people to care about the cat by making cats cool and make Bitcoin fun again. And if you go to any event where Taproot Wizards have a presence, they are just giving out wizard hats and throwing a party. So I think too often we get hung up on the tech and don't realize that there are other aspects of whether or not something has good execution and good adoption and so on. Whether or not we'll see a soft fork soon is obviously the subject of many prediction markets, for example. It's nice to be able to hedge your bets. Like we're flexible, right? If it's OPCat, it's OPCat. If it's BitVM, it's BitVM. If it's merge mining, it's merge mining. Like we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket and saying it has to be this and we will die on this hill. We're saying let's drive it all forward. And in particular, given that our co-founders Alexei and Don have such a strong research getting their PhDs from Imperial College in cryptography, they're like, well, okay, this is a natural fit for me. I'm just going to support this part of us all trying to push it forward. And if that ends up being what it is, great, we'll be the leader and we'll be ready to use that. If it ends up being something else, that's fine too, right? And it's not like a privatized version of the research. It's like, let's push it forward. And then as it becomes possible to use, that's going to be available for everyone, because a free market keeps us all honest, right? You want a bunch of people honestly doing their best to like keep fees reasonable and have good go-to-market strategy and not rely on monopolistic partnerships to make it so that there's a winner take all. Like all of this is obvious for how the world should be and how the world will be. So when I say we're driving forward BitVM research, I don't mean because we're convicted that that is the only way we can scale all this. It's simply because that's where we have the knowledge and the skills to be able to contribute meaningfully and actually try and push this and accelerate it from like, a maybe ever to a maybe soon.
I can appreciate that take. Right. It kind of circles back to the beginning conversation about the similarities between Bob and Emblem, and how Emblems we support 15 different protocols, and we've been first for a handful of the different Bitcoin NFT protocols to trade and catch market adoption. But we get this question a lot of, right, where's the right place to deploy on, right? Because we're going to deploy Emblem on Bob at some point here in the future. And then others ask us, right, well, what about deploying on all these other chains? And then, right, what's the right protocol to support? And how do you know Bitcoin ordinals want DeFi? How do you know, right, Bitcoin stamps want to be in the metaverse? These are just, I'm just making kind of examples here. And what Adam and I say a lot in the team is we have no idea. There's literally no way to predict the future here. But the best thing to do is to understand the technologies that exist there, to understand the different cultures, and really try to build, kind of general tooling that'll allow communities and users and builders this opportunity to show you what's the right way. And then once you understand what's the right avenue, then you can finally act on it. So it sounds like Bob is really taking that similar approach. Adam, do you have any questions? I see you thinking over there. I know you're enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. It's super interesting. I actually really appreciate the, pragmatism of kind of the whole thing. And I actually really like that you're leaning into one specific area. I think that's really, really smart, rather than taking, what I described as a scattershot approach. which some seem to be, or most seem to just not really have any kind of direction. It's just like, we're building it, give us money, and let's see what happens. So I actually love the directed approach. One question about, I heard in there possibly merge mining. Is this just an idea to do something similar to like what Rootstock does with their merge mining, or is this something you're actually actively trying to implement?
So on merge mining, we did release a paper called for Optimine. Optimine is the word that we came up with for basically merge mining for optimistic rollup. So there is already a very mature technical write-up on this. If anyone is interested, I think Derek definitely will be able to point you to where you can find the link. And in terms of, we did have the initial roadmap is that we want this to be implemented a few months after the mainnet launch. We have been working very closely with, for example, miners like Marathon Digital to explore this kind of, collaboration and how we can really like reward and incentivize miners to be in this network. Also, as our investors, some of our investors include BRBTC and Ant-Alpha, which are very prestige venture arm from mining pools in China. And so this, I guess, we don't have a lot of confirmed timeline in terms of when this will go live, but it is a serious approach with the structure all lined up. Derek, do you have more to comment on this?
Sure. I'm pasting the aforementioned paper and the easier to read version of the docs on this Twitter space, so folks can hit that comment button on the bottom right if you want to go check out the docs and learn more. I think it's worth a 1-minute detour to what merge mining is. And the reason I say that is because I came from the EVM development side, and not only have I had to learn about infrastructure on the EVM side, I've had to learn about infrastructure on the Bitcoin side. And I'll be the first to admit that I didn't really understand what the UTXO model was until the past year or so. And I've been in the space for years. So I think that we should all be humble and admit that there's way too much happening all the time, and do each other the respect and courtesy of explaining our terms. So merge mining is not a new concept. It's been around for years, and the basic premise is simple. If you've already got a bunch of Bitcoin miners doing proof of work to secure the Bitcoin blockchain, what if, without any extra electricity bill, they could use that compute they're already doing to secure a second chain, which I'll call a side chain for the definition. And how that works is basically they're just like, they're running their computers. Think of it like a slot machine where they spit out an output hash, check if it's a valid block header for the recent Bitcoin blocks, and if it's not, they throw it away and try again. All this does is, if a miner opts into this kind of a process, they also run a Bob node, so they're aware of recent Bob transactions. And as they're running that slot machine and pulling up these output hashes, they pause for an extra moment to check if it's a valid output hash for the recent Bob blocks. If it is, then they put that output hash in the next Bitcoin block that they mine. And so the result is that they get to stamp on the Bitcoin chain for everyone to see not only the block header for the Bitcoin block, which is called the Coinbase transaction, but in that transaction, the block header for the merge mine block, in this case, Bob. Or a real example would be Rootstock or Namecoin. These have been in production for years. So what does that get you? If you have, in a cartoon example where 100% of Bitcoin miners opt into this kind of thing, then this sidechain has 100% of the security as Bitcoin mainnet itself. And if you've got 50%, it's 50% and so on. So if the question is about whether and when we're going to do it and how much, my hands are a little tied there, but I will say it's an uphill battle, right? You literally have to take all these mining pools out to dinner over drinks and create actual deals that make sense for publicly traded companies. And these are not things they do flippantly, right? Plus, it has to make sense for them. We're trying to increase revenue for miners so that they're more sustainable. This is a pretty important talking point. It's baked into our bones that we are trying to bring value back to Bitcoin, the network, and Bitcoin miners so that it can survive existentially as the halvings go on and on, which not a lot of other Bitcoin L2s can say. Specifically, the proof of stake ones. They're like, just throw your BTC, the asset, to secure our network, but the miners are left out to dry.
So let's get into that a little bit, and I'm sure that has to do with if you guys are doing tokens or whatever. But is this, you guys are going to have a token for the Bob network, and then this token is going to be used in the Bob network, and obviously to reward miners and that sort of thing? Is that the current strategy?
So the reward for miners will be in Bitcoin because miners want Bitcoin. That's in terms of token, yes, there will be tokens. I cannot really share too much about the token, but it will be in terms of mining rewards, it will be in Bitcoin. So as Derek mentioned before about, like the liquidity bridge that we built for, easy on-off ramp between Bitcoin mainnet and, TBTC, WBTC on Bob. Like those are some of the examples of tooling that we can use for, for miners, for this conversion for the miner, and also like the strategies around, Bitcoin yields that Derek was mentioning before about, how we work and collaborate with a lot of these companies that build amazing products to bring Ethereum yields for Bitcoin builders. Those are the things that we would plug in for our miners who will be mining Bob blocks, so they can receive rewards in the currency that they're used to, that they appreciate, and they also have the option to basically very easily generate yield directly from the rewards that they're generating.
So basically, you're doing some sort of system. I'm just thinking about, okay, Litecoin merges with, or Dogecoin merges with Litecoin, right? But when the miner mines a Dogecoin block, they actually receive the reward from that Dogecoin block, whatever, 10,000 Doge. So this is a system where the Bob network would basically somehow fund the Bitcoin to be rewarded to the miners. Is that right? Something along those lines?
It depends. Yeah, there's flexibility in implementation, but at the end of the day, the primitives are like, we receive transaction fees as a network, and then the miners want something. And though there could be intermediary steps, there probably will be, and that's not crystal clear at this point. But the long story short is that the value coming into the Bob network would get funneled over to miners so they can secure the network.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and currently the underlying gas asset on Bob is Ethereum. So this is kind of something that's really like a plus for being an OPL2, because everyone have Ethereum. So it's not really like us having a token or not is not really a deciding factor of how our chain will be running. It wouldn't really limit the way that users and miners interact with our protocol.
I see Adam's mining experience really kicking off. Bells has really changed you, man. I love it.
Well, I do know, to Derek's point, you got the mining pool operators, and I do concur that is absolutely needed. You need to basically wine and dine them to get them on board. That's about personal connections and convincing them that it's in their best interest, which isn't necessarily difficult if you have a vibrant network. All miners want to make more money, period, full stop. And so I think in a lot of ways, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg there, which you guys have a little bit of a challenge probably. But at the end of the day, if you guys are successful, zero question, you'll get miners on board, because miners just are interested in, bottom line.
Well, and may I add one point, that this is not just for security, and it's not just for branding. There are even UX benefits to this kind of a, let's call it, shoehorned infrastructure choice. Because as an optimistic rollup on Ethereum, we are subject to the same 7-day withdrawal period or challenge period as Optimism, Arbitrum, Base, and the rest. Because it's an optimistic proof system, you basically have to sit around and wait 7 days before you can withdraw your assets back to Ethereum, which sucks. I did it recently, and just watching my Bitcoin sit there for a whole week not doing anything, I was like, man, this is a bummer. If we implemented merge mining, because we would have finality and security from Bitcoin, we would actually modify our rollups code, and by that I mean the L1 smart contract for Bob on Ethereum, to say we require recent proof of work output from merge mining in order to settle our state. No proof of work, no state settlement. And in that world, the true sense of finality actually comes from the Bitcoin miners, even though like we're cosplaying as an Ethereum rollup. And one of the things we get is that we can skip the 7-day challenge period. And if we have the recent merge mining output, we could have finality in like, call it 3 Bitcoin blocks instead of 7 days. And now you're talking a UX benefit because you can bridge up to Bob trustlessly, no fee from Ethereum, literally like $10 million of wrapped Bitcoin in an instant, lossless, and then right back down to Ethereum in 3 blocks or whatever, lossless. That's unheard of. Like, try moving $10 million around from chain to chain, and you'll know what a pain in the ass it is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. So I want to dive in here into Spice and then the application layer right after it. Right when you open the Bob website, the first thing you see is something called Bob Fusion. It says the first hybrid L2, and it says Harvest Spice right underneath that. If there isn't a native token, or maybe this is, what is points? Is this, or is Spice? Is this like a point system, or is this something new and native and novel to the Bob ecosystem?
Yeah, Spice is a Fusion campaign is a Spice. It's a point system. It's inspired by the sci-fi Dune. If anyone here have ever watched it,
great movie.
Yeah, so Spice is a very valuable resource in the movie. So that's why we named our points after it. We had a Fusion season 1 before our mainnet launch, basically inviting people to lock up TBL in a time lock contract, and people can earn Spice points from doing that. And once our mainnet went live, we invite people to bridge those assets from Ethereum mainnet onto Bob network and start using it. So the calculation of Spice come from 3 things. One is the assets that you hold, which is the TBL from how much, different kind of assets that you have in your wallet. Of course, some of the assets will give you more points than the other ones, namely stable coins and wrapped Bitcoins. And the other part would be the gas fee generated, because as a chain, the driving force for our chain will be the gas fee, the sequencer fee. So we do kind of reward both projects who deploy on Bob as well as users, early adapters on Bob, by rewarding them by a calculation based on the gas fee. This is also a way that we do gas fee rebate. And the third one is basically referral. So everyone who sign up for this campaign will have their own referral link that they can share with people, and they will always get some kind of reward based on the people that they bring into the ecosystem on a percentage base. So very simple game, just a way to make things more gamified and invite. If you go to the Fusion page, you will see like a whole list of different projects that's actively participating in the campaign. So that's also one way for the users to understand what's the opportunities in our ecosystem.
Fantastic. That's exactly kind of what I thought here. And then moving into the application layer, I have something pulled up on the screen here that's showing a huge variety, over 100 projects strong, that have deployed or are deploying on Bob. Everything from DeFi to gaming and metaverse, ordinals, inscription, security, on and off ramps, bridge, inference tooling, and wallets. From the builder perspective, let's say I'm somebody who's in the crowd listening, and I'm building a decentralized application, and it exists on Ethereum, and maybe I want to deploy it on Bob, or maybe it's some sort of native Bitcoin project. What is the process to building on Bob, building on Bitcoin?
At this point, we could turn it over to the guests. We've got Rav listening, who I'm speaking to right now, about what it looks like to deploy. We've got Power Rangers Go listening, which is the runes from the Sovereign team, who's been with us since day 1. We had Segment listening, who's one of our larger lending protocols. And it's a simple answer. This was literally the entire point of doing Bob this way. It's the same DevX as people have come to be used to. And I don't just mean like the average one. I mean the world-class one, like Tenderly. If I say Bob has Tenderly, most people are like, I've never heard of it. Advanced Solidity devs are like, great. That was like literally a non-negotiable for me in a chain, because you can do like trace debugging, and it's just so hard to debug smart contract deployment and interactions. So we have these ecosystem deals with things like Tenderly at the node level and the smart contract level. And we have this cool demo we did in Nashville recently called Bob Pay. I won't explain how it works, but it showed off things like dynamic.xyz, wallet and account abstraction, being able to generate a non-custodial wallet from a social login, like an email address or a Telegram, that's fully non-custodial. You can export those private keys anytime. They have their own thing about how it's a secure enclave, and you should trust that they haven't read the private key. I believe it, but you shouldn't, and so you could just transfer it anyway. But regardless, it's non-custodial. That's like at the UX level. If you're an app developer, you can use that, and you don't even have to pay their SaaS fee. Like, we have the deal with them so that anyone building on Bob can use that tech. Like, literally every dApp has the Connect wallet flow. They are world class at it, and you can use them for free. Or like Zero Dev and Pimlico. Now we're getting into account abstraction and smart accounts. How can you, this is very similar to the kind of stuff Emblem Vault's doing. Like, how can you re-envision what it means to hold assets? Maybe my Bitcoin wallet is signing transactions so that a smart account on chain on Bob does things so that I can only ever hold a Bitcoin wallet and not have to install MetaMask or anything else, and yet still bridge my stuff over to Bob, buy this, sell that, get my yield, and then bridge back to Bitcoin with only ever using my Bitcoin wallet. Again, we have an ecosystem deal with them so that developers on Bob can use that for free, which I'm not, like, we're a young chain, you know, we're not number one by TVL, you know, we're scrappy, and we are trying so hard to make it a best-in-class developer experience, not scattershot, not shotgun, for these specific things. What have Bitcoiners been asking for years? And of the people that have tried to give it to them, why have they said no? And it's the things we've already talked about that I don't need to recapitulate. It's about trust minimization. It's about UX. It's about safety. It's about speed. And we're trying to bring all those pieces together and are trying to attract the kinds of builders that are like, I would love to give somebody a one-click UX to get yield on their Bitcoin and then come back to mainnet. I would love to give somebody the ability to have a shared treasury of friends like a DAO, and to be able to mint inscriptions native to Bitcoin and pay for it with the money in my DAO treasury on some other network like Bob. Like, why can't I write to Bitcoin from some other network? That should be possible. Why can't I read Bitcoin state on some other network and use it as conditional logic in my smart contract? That should be possible. Why can't I have finality and trustlessness to be able to bridge back and forth without taking a giant haircut on my funds? That should be possible. So because all those things are possible, we're starting to see developers' ears perk up and say, oh, I want to scale Bitcoin. Maybe Bob's a pretty good option for me.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Here on the website, it says that you guys have about 92 million in TVL, so off to a great start. Now that you guys have launched, and it's been excuse my memory, maybe 4 or 5 months since you've launched and started the Fusion campaign. Where do you see the builders gravitating towards? What sector or what market tends to have the most type of builders? And also, what is the community kind of gravitating towards as well?
I guess in terms of builders, Derek, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I have to go in about 2 minutes so I can
Okay.
be on time for a call with Rob, who's listening right now, because
Nice.
he and I are discussing how to make his project. Go check out Rob's profile if you're listening to this. His project is exactly this, right? How can I take advantage of the hype around inscriptions and ordinals and maybe make a use case related to yield and buying and selling? It's a cousin to what Emblem Vault's doing, but trying to be more Bitcoin native in its implementation. So those kinds of things are where I get excited to jump in and say, okay, keep your implementation as close to Bitcoin mainnet as long as you can, for all the obvious reasons. And then as soon as you start to hit the pretty low ceiling on what you can do on Bitcoin, maybe Bob's a really good choice to consider.
I want to quickly, Derek, I know you have to run, so, feel free to jump, I can take the rest. But yeah, I want to just quickly mention, if we have time, I am keen to show you guys how Bob Pay work, because Derek just was mentioning how we had this feature release. That it's not a product that we're commercializing, but it is a demo, I guess, where we built for Bitcoin Nashville. Actually, we built it under 2 weeks before the conference in Nashville, and we used it as a way to demonstrate to developers and entrepreneurs there what is possible on Bob. So if I don't know if you guys have like a cell phone that's available. If you have 5 minutes, we can quickly do like this demo with you.
It's funny because I already did it. I did it while I was there with you, and I can confirm it was this really seamless experience, very, very light and easy. You were doing that at the show, so yeah, it was very impressive. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I guess we don't have to like.
I mean, we could do it. Are you saying with the people in the audience, you want them to do it? Try to do it.
I'm thinking about just sending you some Bitcoin right now.
Sure. I mean, people can put their what do they need to put in? They can put it in the replies.
I would do it just with one person, just for the sake of time before the show ends. So maybe one of you can send. I have your Telegram, so maybe you can send me your email address, whichever one that you want to use up there, and then I will just quickly send you like some USDC or USDT.
I'll just slide in here because I do got to drop, and I want to say thanks so much, guys, for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, you can email it to me. Mine's just jake@emblem.pro is my email. That's
Jacob. Jake. JAKOB.
Jake. JAKE at emblem.pro.
Emblem.pro. So I am on pay.gobob.xyz right now for anyone who wants to check it out. Once you get into the page, you just need to put in your email address. And once you put in your email address, you will receive a confirmation code in your email. There's no requirement for memorizing your password or anything. Go to your email address, copy and paste that confirmation code, and then you will be signed in. So right now, I signed into my account. I put jake@emblem.pro, and I say, okay, I'm sending him 9,000 sats, which is equal to $5. I'm pressing send. Right now, it's popping up a page for signature. I press sign. Now it says successfully transferred 9,000 sats. So if you refresh your page right now, you should be receiving the money instantly in under 2 seconds. So this is something that we built as kind of like a demonstration of alternative to Lightning Network, in the sense of microtransaction, cross-border payment, what people can do on a daily basis, and how normies can even interact with the Bob blockchain without understanding how to interact with all of their the seed phrases and all the complication with crypto wallet. And this is also a demonstration of what Derek was mentioning about our partnership with players like Dynamic, who invented the embedded wallet. And these are the kind of tooling that will be easily available for people with limited or with all kinds of dev experiences on EVM, but wouldn't be possible at all at this stage on Bitcoin mainnet. Just a little wrap up before we end the show.
Yeah, I like that feature. There was a few other proof of stake networks that I remember had that kind of simple, wallet creation mechanism, and it's really, really good to tie in email as well, because that's what most people use. I do want to pass it over to Funky, who's patiently had their hand up. Thank you for waiting. Do you have a question or comment on the conversation?
Just a comment, Jake. Thanks so much for letting me up. It was actually Chris had reached out to me yesterday to try and join the space. I'm actually doing like 3 different things at once. I'm on a live stream, but just I'm kind of ignoring it at the moment because I want to come up here. Longtime fan of this team. Our company, we've provided infrastructure. We're running RPC nodes for Bob and stuff like that. We run interlay vaults and all sorts of stuff. We've known this team, and they're amazing for a very long time. So I just want to come up here, give some props to Bob. My wife's down in the audience. and she was upset that she didn't get the Bitcoin. She would love 9,000 sats. And she's a hardcore Bitcoiner. And so that's another reason we love Bob, because we feel that this merge of taking that OP stack and EVM accessibility, the liquidity that taps into on Ethereum, and then just connecting this to Bitcoin is an amazing solution. All of the tooling that has already been built out, we jumped into Fusion day one. So I have some, Wrap Bitcoin just doing its thing and earning spice and stuff like that, but just really interested in the conversation. I was listening in one ear. And so I wanted to give some, shout out, gratitude, love for all the stuff you guys are talking about. It's really impressive what you guys are building. And it was keen to learn a little bit more about what's going on with Emblem Vault and everything else. And our collection, our PFPs, both me and my wife, is called Kingdom Ventures, the decentralized VC fund. And we started off on Polkadot. And now it looks like we're going to move to Bob because we're so bullish on Bob and everything that the team is building. KBL, our founder, and he's been chatting with the Bob team. So looks like we're going to end up over there as well as a collection. So really excited about the future of Bob and Bitcoin, everything that you guys are doing. And it was really cool just learning a little bit from you guys, Jake and Adam and everybody else. And I know he had to drop, but it was cool listening to Derek as well. I didn't know he was part of the team and that he had joined something recently. So just wanted to get up here and share some love toward the end of the space. And thank you guys so much for doing this space. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'll probably go back and listen to it, actually, so I can listen, instead of just having it in one ear while I was multitasking. But anyhow, thanks so much for letting me up, and I hope you guys have a great day. Keep building. Bullish on Bob.
Thank you so much. Funky's wife, please send me a DM. I'm happy to do the demo with you. I unfortunately also have to run very soon because I do have a call that's started 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up right now, Zixi. I appreciate everyone who joined us and had this conversation. Emblem is also very bullish on Bob. We've been in communications with them for a few months to bring Emblem to Bob. Emblem hasn't deployed on an L2 or an EVM capable chain in a few years now. And so, seeing a flourishing decentralized application ecosystem, is very attractive because from the Emblem side, right, we have about a little over 100 million in Bitcoin NFT value sitting inside of vaults. And so now from Emblem's perspective, we're moving from supporting, immature Bitcoin NFT ecosystems like Counterparty and Ordinals and Stamps. And as those native ecosystems grow, users want to basically put these assets to work, whether they want to go borrow against it in a higher liquidity environment, or they want to take their rare pepes into the metaverse, right? Or they want to partake in some sort of staking program. These are the things that Emblem's exploring, and Bob is a great partner for us to be able to do that. So once Emblem gets past our migration, then it's going to be one of the first things that we do is bringing all of our assets over to Bob so that we can then interact with all of the the decentralized applications and really just start exploring the ecosystem for our users and to explore and have a little bit of fun as well. Adam, any final comments before we wrap up here?
No, I just love, other than I love what I'm hearing. This is great stuff and really great to learn more about it. Great seeing you guys in Nashville and all that sort of thing, but to actually dive deeper here and really understand the level of this, which is pretty impressive. I'm really excited about what's going on Bob right now.
Bullish on Bob. Final notes right here. Adam, myself, and Chris were on stage. We work at Emblem Vault, the leading cross-chain NFT protocol in the industry. I've been on mainnet since 2020, the first NFT bridge that ever existed. We're going to be deploying on Bob and having a lot of partnerships. We host this show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We focus on builders on Bitcoin, multi-chain ecosystems, and everything new in ordinals. We'll be back next week. We're going to have a bunch of featured guests. Please make sure you follow Zixi so that you can follow along for what's building on Bob. And also, please follow the Emblem account, the one that's hosting this, so you can follow along our journey as we take the entire industry cross-chain so you can put your NFTs to work. Also, give everyone else a stage on follow. Thank you, Funky, for coming on stage for the awesome words. Appreciate everyone. Thank you for your Thursday morning. Stay safe out there, and we'll be back with the show Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, stay safe and great talking, Zixi.